right now. So,
Okay. All right. I'm going to hit start and count.
okay. No, stop. Good.
Yep.
I'll
Okay.
edit this. Okay.
All right.
See ya.
Bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar called Breathing New Life into Performance Management. My name is Stephanie Austri, and I'm the marketing manager here at HR Strategies Consulting. Thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, I just want to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to add them into the chat, and we'll try and address them as we go through. But we will save time for questions at the end of the webinar as well, so we can address them then. And we will be sharing both a copy of the recording of the webinar as well as the slides that we're going to go through today, so you will get them later on this week. So I'd like to start by introducing my co-presenter, Dan Whitmarsh. Dan is a solutions engineer here at HR Strategies Consulting, and he has over 20 years experience helping clients achieve positive business outcomes through employee engagement initiatives, talent management process reengineering, and adoption of HR technologies. So Dan will be guiding our performance management journey today, and he always makes sure that that journey is a fun and insightful one. You can see that Tuesdays are yellow shirt day at HR Strategies Consulting, so we are right on trend. For today's session, our plan is to give a brief introduction to HR Strategies Consulting for those of you who are unfamiliar with us. We'll then talk about how performance management is much more than just an annual review. Dan's going to cover the key elements of PM and talk about some practical steps for how it can help drive positive business outcomes. And finally, we'll talk about next steps. And as I said, we will leave some time for questions at the end. So let's get started here. So HR Strategies Consulting has been reimagining HR to get the most from an organization's HR investments for over 20 years. Since employees are the foundation of any organization, we specialize in the employee experience by uniting HR and technology to make work-life better for all. We have two lines of business, a human capital management practice and an IT practice, and we collectively engage those to deliver holistic solutions that align with our clients' business strategies. Our HCM practice provides advice, insights, and expertise to address people issues facing firms today, while our IT practice focuses on how to identify, purchase, implement, integrate, and support technology solutions to achieve an organization's business goals. So if you've attended any of our other recent webinars, this diagram may look familiar to you. So we've been focusing on different elements of the employee life cycle. So in February and March, we were focusing on the joining piece around hiring and onboarding and how the candidate and employee experience can be improved. We then moved into the growing piece last month with a focus on learning. And obviously today we are going to be talking about performance management. So I think, Dan, we can get going.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephanie. And my compliments to you for the great work you do in helping organize these events. So let's start. Where do you start when you talk about performance management? I thought I'd give you this funny little cartoon just to read for a second. Maybe set the pace with some humor. And then what I really want to ask you, as you think about performance management, I want you to think about what do these numbers have in common, 58 and 42. I'm a little quick on the slide there, flew ahead of me on it. But this is a really groundbreaking numbers that shook my world. Whoa, wow, the whole deck is going backwards. There we go. A Harvard Business Review published not long ago a study that they found that 58% of people trust an absolute stranger, but yet only 42% trust their boss. And to me, this wasn't really designed to be a performance management based study, but I think it speaks volumes to the nature of performance management and why it's withering on the vine in many organizations are just not effective at all. And we're going to talk more about that. The gap between I would rather talk to a complete stranger about something versus wanting to talk and trust what's coming from my manager is really noticeable and really big. And that's a gap we have to close. Because if you think about it, Gallup also reported recently that 70% of the performance of an individual is directly influenced by their manager. So 70% of the variance of their discretionary energy that they want to put into the job is a function of the manager that they work for. And further, employees whose managers communicate effectively are 3 times more engaged. If they did routine communication checks, they get highly engaged employees who receive feedback at least once a week. So these stats and trends are things that we're going to bump into as we go through this to help you support and understand the business case behind reinvigorating or reinvesting in your performance management cycle. And for fun, I thought we'd put a kind of top 10 reasons why we hate PM. I mean, the topic really is about how it's considered to be dying on the vine and people aren't using it effectively. First of all, isn't this something we did last year? That's a really common refrain, and it's definitely because it's not timely. Why are we evaluated on this? So often we hear complaints from employees and managers about the variables or the pieces they're being scored on that they just serve no relevance to the day-to-day work. Nobody's listening to me. Employees aren't given a chance to be a voice, so it's not meaningful. If they did take action or do something, it doesn't connect to changes. Why are you hurting my feelings? Some employees actually feel that performance management is an antagonistic event. It's just pinpointing and yelling at people for no particular reason. Others, to the stat we just read about, the 58 and the 42, I don't trust my manager. So, I don't think this is an honest and open process. And connected to that, my manager already has their fades. So sometimes not only is there no honesty in how people evaluate each other, but it's not objectively done and ranked and scored and calibrated. And then finally, or not finally, a few more, this isn't helpful. It's not productive. It doesn't do anything to help change what we're trying to get done here. And what a waste of time. We talked about all these things. We had great conversation, but nothing came of it. And that's the biggest defeater of all in the performance management cycle. And then finally, the last 2, we still get paid the same. So whether I'm a top performer or a bottom performer, it doesn't matter. There's no incentives attached to this. And then isn't my manager being evaluated as well? There's no accountability. So if it's just the top telling the middle what to do to the bottom, it makes no sense. And these are all reasons performance management fails miserably. It's a rear view mirror approach. There's too much time spent looking at what happened. Usually we're doing performance management on the 364th day of the year. Looking back, we're trying to find a one-size-fits-all process that makes it difficult to adapt. That's not realistic. And it's reactive. How many times have you sat down and tried to jot out a performance review on that 364th day and think, gee, what did we talk about this year? How did that happen? And these are all reasons why these initiatives just continue to fail, because they forget to have managers and employees are one part of the equation, but they forget to have regular check-ins. They're not using meetings for tactical problem solving, and they're lacking training on how to give feedback and coaching. And HR has no visibility into how this is actually happening inside the organization and what's going on. A great example, years ago, I did a consulting engagement with a Fortune 100 client, and massive organization, and the executive who was in charge of the program walked me through part of the warehouse at one point to show me their facilities. It was just an incredible place. And he was walking through, he would walk through the warehouse and, Jimmy, hey, Sally, hey, how's the family? Good. Kids are great. Awesome. Check. How's this? Yeah. How's work? Good. And then he got to the end of the parking lot as he walked me out, and he said, well, that covers performance management for another year. And he was actually serious. It was drive-by performance management. He felt that that was his duty to do performance management with just these grunts and nods and groans about performance management. And that's not realistic. That company, by the way, is no longer a Fortune 100 company. It has slid off the map for managerial reasons. So we need to take action. You know, we need to understand that performance is a continuous cycle. It's has big impacts. We've got 40% lower employee turnover if you do this and do it well. We can lead to increased employee engagement. We can generate more revenue per employee. And the realistic part of this is that 48% of executives say performance processes just aren't working. So that's almost half, right? 66% of employees say this interferes with their productivity. It's just a nuisance. It doesn't change anything. And then 71% of organizations say performance needed to reinvent it. So that's what we're here to do today. We're going to talk about what we can do to reinvent this. And these are all coming from very big credible sources such as Deloitte, the Corporate Executive Board, and Brandon Hall. Okay. So let's get this back to the basics and really focus on the real purpose of performance management so that we don't abandon the process, we just use it more effectively, okay? Performance management, on one side over here, we need to help HR make better workforce decisions. We need to know who top performers are, who needs help. We need to know how people are managing with the tasks and the skills and competencies we're asking them to develop to achieve our corporate goals. And then on the other side, you know, the company has goals. I'm sure every CEO puts out, I've got 3, 5, or a list of 10. It might even be in a report that gets issued to stakeholders. Those are goals that the company is trying to get to, and they need to align them and get them to down the organization, cascade them in such a way so that they can actually get in step and achieve that goal. So Gallup survey tells us that managers who hold regular meetings with them are 3 times as likely to be engaged as a manager who does not hold regular meetings. I had to put that stat in there again because it's so relevant. This is not a 364 one-day event. It's an everyday event, okay? So let's jump into this a little deeper. You need to understand what's your performance purpose. So, you know, we did a top 10 list reasons of why it didn't work. Let's put a top 10 list out there of why it should work and why you should be doing this. You need to make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's critical. We need to set up team rankings of top to bottom performers for promotions. That's really important. We need to be transparent in the solution. We need to allow individuals the opportunity to voice opinion. So it shouldn't just be, like I said earlier, the top telling the middle what they need to do to the bottom. You need to build a process that allows for true, meaningful dialogue between employees and their managers around competencies. And that's going to be a recurring theme we're going to hear a few times in today's talk. 4, we need to highlight where an individual needs to improve. Stephanie, you're a 4 out of 5 in XYZ competency. I need you to be at a 5 in order to keep, you know, getting top results in this role, right? We need to celebrate those who excel. So a lot of times performance management is the process that helps us identify formally who our hypos are and set up different substreams in the learning channel to do career development for high potential performers. We need to identify top performers and reward and recognize. We need to connect discretionary pay to performance. You just can't take out a handful of cash at the end of the year and give some people one raise and some people another raise, because pay is becoming less and less private and more transparent in today's commerce. So it's really important to make sure that there's a direct connection between performance and discretionary pay. We need to move the needle on engagement. Sometimes you're just taking this initiative because you just feel that the company's lost its edge and we're not all moving in step and we don't feel pride in where we work. We need to reduce turnover. You know, people are leaving because they can't do the meaningful work they want to do. And believe me, people do want to do meaningful work. It's usually the organization or the manager that's holding them back from doing so. And then finally, we need to make sure we all work in a common direction for the organization. So really goal alignment and getting us moving in the right plan. So let's jump into this even further. Here's that theme. We need to enable manager and employee dialogue. It needs to be documented, guided discussions on common goals and employee generated goals, that's what creates engagement, okay? Quick study from the Wall Street Journal, companies that have higher than average levels of engagement realize 27% higher profits than their industry peers. Who wouldn't want to have a quarter of your annual total income, as a bonus to work with, to make work better, to improve your product, to compensate high rewarding or higher awarded individuals or contributing individuals. So there's lots of reasons to do this. When we look at the overall expectation, it's about transforming the work experience. We need to connect people to the company purpose. And that means all employees and all experiences in every location in every country that you work in, not just a handful of critical people, but allowing everybody to get in and not just pull their weight, but pull more than their weight so that you can get that 27% extra revenue per organization at the end of the year. So the other key factor here to consider is that we need to be proactive. So too often, we talked about that 364 rear view mirror. Hey, I need to make up something today because assessments or performance evals are due tomorrow. What did we get done this year? That's not effective. Reflecting back on those events is not helpful. You need to be proactive and really empower employees and managers to address performance issues before it becomes a critical problem. Right? The number of performance improvement plans, we'll talk about this, which is where somebody might get sidetracked, derailed, or no longer be on the path to success at an organization, decreases significantly with the more proactive an organization is in managing their performance management process. Quarterly check-ins, monthly check-ins, we're even suggesting weekly check-ins. Okay, this is becoming the new norm. It sounds like a burden, but the proof is in the pudding, and it bears results every time. Nobody's ever been upset by doing too many check-ins on a situation. This is a quick slide here that we saw on Deloitte University Press, and I'm not going to read it all through here today, but it really highlighted, the old rules of performance management versus the new rules, and a couple key elements to call out. If you look at the top, conducted once per year. No, that's old school. Check-ins conducted quarterly or more frequently. Feedback collected at the end of the year. No, we're doing this on an ongoing basis. Confidentiality, employees evaluated by their manager. It's not like that anymore. Managers don't focus on evaluating performance anymore. They're focused on coaching and developing and bringing the best out of their employees, okay? So these are all changes, and it's a good read when you get this deck just to look at the slide and go through, do we do these things and how are we making out, okay? So we've got all of these great things and reasons to do this. Now let's talk about the PM Toolkit, because these are the tools that we have to change the needle on any one of those given list of the top 10, or you may even have your own items you want to bring off of that top 10 list. So we've got goals, they can be cascaded from the CEO down the organization, or they can be about me and my individual role. I need my development, and I'm thinking I need to improve on communication skills. So I'm going to take some programming and ask to be evaluated and change how my manager thinks I'm communicating. Or it could be about a project. I may want to pick up a second language so that I can start working with one of the international arms of our language. So goals take many shapes and directions, and they can be personal goals too. It could be just to be less, more timely in my work, or to be more punctual in my day, to treat others with more empathy. There are lots of different reasons that a goal can be created and monitored by an individual. Second, of 6, by the way, continuous performance management. It's not just about coming to that 364th day meeting and waiting for the best to happen. It's about tracking of all of the meetings, activities, and achievements we're doing that are connected to my goals, right? Third, full performance management cycle. This is the element that everybody thinks of when they think about performance management as dying. Because if you only just do an annual performance management cycle, you likely are dying on the vine. Performance isn't serving a purpose, okay? Steph, I do see that there are questions coming in. You want to just keep an eye on those, and if they're relevant to this slide or not, we'll jump in.
So far, I've been able to address them on my own,
Good.
So you're all good, but I will definitely interrupt you.
Awesome, thank you. So performance management cycle, this is obviously the way most people perceive the whole process. It's an annual evaluation of goals, skills, and competencies, okay? So feedback, this is a great add-on, right? We're talking about giving feedback, talking about receiving feedback, and then we're talking about getting your manager to acknowledge that you've had feedback from other peers and marking it in a public place so it could be celebrated or part of a rewards and recognition program. Then we also have off-cycle performance management reviews. So it could look very much like a full cycle performance management view, but it might be connected to a project that I'm working on and just ask the people involved in that project. Or it could be a performance improvement program. Maybe I've been a poor performer and I need to get back on track, or face the ultimatum of losing my job. And then the last element here in the toolkit is really the 360 or multi-rater review. This is where we're actually not only talking about skills, competencies, but putting it out to internal stakeholders who work with me, but about taking it also outside of the organization to external stakeholders, okay? So that's a list view. Now I want to present it to you in a different way. Think about this, goals. This is what's happening in me, in my head, and what I think I need to do for work. So traditionally, when performance management cycle starts, we have goals that we're working on, and your manager asks you to set up 2, 3, 5, 6 goals. Some of them may be fed to you through a cascade, but often you get the ability to add your own goals that are either connected to development or to the company goals, right? So this is about me and what I think I need to do. And then we go to continuous performance management. So now it's, hey, what type of meetings and activities and achievements are we tracking so that we can actually say things are changing in this domain? And this is where my manager and myself sit down and discuss my goals, right? And then we get to the next level of, hey, now we've got a full cycle of performance management. So we've added in your work. This is where your work comes together with your goals and the conversations between you and your manager. Likewise, as we go to the next level, we've got all of those elements, but now we're incorporating in the feedback of others into the process. For the off-cycle program, it's very much the same as all that we've talked about through the first 4 steps, but now over here on the right, we might be adding on a specific project or a specific focus of a checklist of just smaller things as a subset of the full cycle of performance management. And then finally, we get to 360 performance reviews. Now we're taking what's happened inside of our organization and getting feedback and asking others from outside our clients' operations to assess if this is true and validate what we're learning inside the organization. So it's a very, I chose this order intentionally and in reason because it really does cascade from the individual up to how this impacts outside of the organization. So to look at it from a different view, you've got the goals. My development, my needs, I need to do more of, less of, or do something differently that I never did before. And really, then we grow to add in continuous performance management. So tracking and chronicling activities and achievements where results are collected between my manager and myself. And then the annual PM cycle where we're focusing on employee manager dialogues and defined observable behaviors. Yep, we're up here in Canada. If you hear it out and about, that's an IOURS in behaviors. Fold in feedback. Now we're talking about putting feedback on top of that cycle and how it's impacted my work, or how my work has been impacted by how my work has impacted others and collecting feedback on it. And then we're doing it all again into a specific project or initiative and then leveraging it outside of the organization. So really, the gray areas here are what goes on inside the organization. Outside in the orangish color here, or creamsicle, it reminds me of, is outside of your organization. Okay, so that's enough about the toolkit. Now let's start to assemble this into an organizational framework that we can use to help you take some next steps and get actions, because everything we have to do here has got to be about understanding where we are, where you are, and then what we can do to actually get you to the next steps in your process. I'm not sure if you guys have been regular attendees because the topics are probably randomly circulated out through social medias and whatnot. But the last month we did a talk on learning efforts, and there was this gentleman named Kirkpatrick who pioneered this model that still everybody adheres to and listens to today. And at the bottom, level 4, is really not just the reaction the learning got or how much content did they take in or the behavioral change. What results did we see change in the business? This is what we're after, is called level 4 Kirkpatrick, okay? And that was the talk last week. This is just a quick summary of it. But you have to think about performance from a learning perspective. It really is, performance is, what did I learn and how did it impact the business? That's the performance, right? So this is where you start to see changes in behavior, development of new skills and capabilities, and then financial impacts for employees that allow for merit, discretionary pay, or bonuses, and then financial impacts for the business, which are your goals aligning and being met. So I know that's a big overview. We're going to break it down even further in a few seconds, okay? So bear with me here on our journey. Where I wanted to go to is starting to help you understand how this could all come together, okay? In the April event on learning where we talked about Kirkpatrick, we did what's called a talent planning development audit. And it was really a 15-point questionnaire. It's available as an Excel. You can go to the link that'll be here or there, or you can find it on our website. You can ask for that document from us. We'd be happy to get it to you. And it asks you to evaluate how ready your organization is to undertake a learning initiative, right? What's the receptivity of the audience going to be like? Because what we're going to find here is that that simple Excel template assessment is going to open your eyes to a few things. You're going to assess your organization's learning readiness, and you're going to start your plans for your learning journey. Why are we talking about learning journey in the middle of a performance WebEx? Because these things are so closely related. You'll see the light in a second, right? So to get this to all come together, you need to think about the learning journey that set up your performance plan, okay? Because really, performance purpose is why we're doing this. What is the purpose for undertaking a performance management program? So then we've got a performance plan. So we've established our purpose. What does our plan look like? What are the variables in there that we're going to use and leverage? And then what's our process to actually roll this out and track the initiative and how the initiative is going? And then finally, the third or fourth portion or last portion of this is measurement of said performance. Did we get to where we wanted to be, right? No surprises, nothing elaborate. So let's break open each of these 4 buckets and look at them. First bucket, your performance purpose. And I want you to come back to that slide we had a few, at the beginning where what's your performance purpose? These are 10 of the most common examples. You may have other ones that are not on this list, and that's great. Pick a few, 2, pick 1, right? Move and start these items and say, okay, so we need to do 1, 2, and 3 that we've outlined here, or write your own performance purpose. So once you've taken that purpose and you understand what it is, you need to make a plan. And this is where the planning and the learning come together, the performance and the learning come together. You have to make sure that your learning objectives tie closely to your performance management goals, okay? And by this, we mean using SMART goals. Maybe redundant for a lot of you, but I'm going to cover it just in the event that some people aren't familiar with what a SMART goal is. It means specific. What are the details for this goal? To increase customer complaint ratios by 3%. That's specific, right? Measurable. How are we going to measure this goal? We have a customer complaint log and we track how many calls come in, right? Is it attainable? Hey, it's at 5% of the calls right now we get are customer complaints, and I need to drop it by 3%. Is that realistic? Is that really something that we can collectively do? Because you have to make a goal attainable. Ideally, if you deliver the right training for the person to change their behavior, their skills or competencies, they should be able to do this, right? So, relevant. How will this goal help me and or the business? You have to define the connection points to what's going to be done and why we're doing this. Is it time bound? So we just can't have goals lingering out there forever. We need to put a date, a parameter, and a check-in on it, and expectations maybe in a detailed timeline. In 3 months, we expect to see 1% change. In 6 months, we expect to see another down to 2%. By the end of the year, we want it down 3% or maybe better if we're fortunate, okay? So this is what SMART goals mean. And when you think about SMART goals, what you're putting down in your learning plan should be the same as what's being tracked in PM. So if you're asking somebody to be more empathetic to customers when they call in and complain, then you need to train your people on that skill and competency. That's what I mean by that. If you want to increase sales, well, you need to put learning curriculum out that increases the skills and competencies of your salespeople so that they close more deals. If you say build a new widget, then you have to deploy training or learning to those people to build a new widget. There has to be a connection point between what's delivered in your learning and what you expect to change. So now that you know what a SMART goal is, go back to your purpose and apply it. So connect discretionary pay to performance. Well, let's define it with that SMART goal, right? So your actual plan itself needs to leverage SMART measurements. You need to define specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals, even for what you're designing at the corporate level, and your CEO and executive team needs to sit and discuss that. They need to define what it looks like. And this is commonly, you'll see this in many performance management systems, what we call observable or defined behaviors. Hey, we've got a 5-point rating scale for customer interactions. Level 5, which is top of the pack, means it looks like this. You're pleasant, you're chipper, you're responsive, you use humor, you're smiling, you're empathetic, you understand, you're apologetic when appropriate, right? Level 4, maybe half of those things. Level 3, you listen. Level 2, this is not good. Level 1, frankly, I'm afraid what this person is going to say on the phone when a customer calls, right? So there's definable levels of behavior at every interval, depending upon what type of rating scale you're using. And a manager doesn't get to use their own whim of judgment about how they think an individual is doing this. They have a list of what the company says this should look like so that there are no arguments and surprises between employees and managers when they have that discussion. Because remember, what we're trying to do here, and we're coming back to this, is performance management just isn't about doing this, it's about the ongoing connection point and conversations between managers and employees on defined objectives, okay? So we're gonna take this even deeper in a second here. This gets a little mathematical, forgive the generalities, but it's worth the understanding. Performance, you know, we want that to be 100%. So it is really the measurement of whatever learning and development you've given and feedback to that learning that's been absorbed over the goals. So if you've given good training and good feedback, this ideally should be 100%. What you're asking me to do should be attainable, right? If somebody only gets 3/4 of it, then it's going to be 75%. Say you get 75% of your goal done this year. If you gave me great development feedback and together we collaborated to a 4th pinnacle of learning called mutual exclusive learning, where we both figured out a better way to do this, I could get to 110 or 120%. We could surpass our goal. This is the ideal objective. This is where you're enabling your employee to actually surpass the expectation, not just by setting a low threshold, but by equipping them to actually redefine the process and make it better in the long run. So performance is measurement of development feedback over goals. Development, these are your skills and competencies, right? This is that learning assessment. You need these skills or these competencies. Feedback, what happens? Feedback, it's based on skills and competencies. So I just put the S and C in here to keep it short. And then finally, goals are attaining skills and competencies or a business outcome based on a collection of skills and competencies. You know, so the example we gave of reducing customer complaints might require 2, 3, or 4 different levels of competencies to come together to create one goal. But in all cases, it is about a collection of skills and competencies. So if you do the math here and strike out everything that is skills and competencies, what we're really saying is performance is the measurement of skills and competencies. I don't think that's a surprise when you look at it this way, right? Bottom line, skills and competencies are the currency that are the backbone of every performance management and learning management solution. And as we're going to talk in the future, also about succession planning, merit pay, workforce planning, okay? So this is a really important item to grasp, that competencies and skills are really what we're discussing as the transactional elements of performance management systems. PM is largely just measuring a cycle of activity between managers and employees. Alone, it changes very little, but if you do it well and you document it and you track it and there's meaningful dialogue between the manager and the employee, and HR equips managers with how to coach and give feedback, it changes. PM consists of goals that are agreed upon by your manager and you. The goals are observable and have defined behaviors at all levels of performance. The goals are driven by development needs or corporate needs, right? If it's coming from the development need, I need to do this, I want to do this, I need a new language, I need to be more empathetic, I need to communicate better, you know, those are individual development needs. If the goals are coming from the corporate cascading down, usually it's a collection of, we need you to focus on these skills. If you don't have these skills, get them. But if you have them, we need you to tighten up and get better at them, okay? So it's still always skills and competency based. Where this is going is into your performance process now, because you can't put loose goose, just any type of information or any statement you want into a performance management system. We have to track all of this, and it all has to be you know, measurable and specific to what the goals are. So in our plan, it consists of two key elements. We need to communicate and leverage change management processes, and then do multi-channel communications from all stakeholders. There's nothing worse than being an individual contributor in a company, being held to high level of accountability on a specific initiative like performance management, only to find out that none of the managers or executive team had to do it. Just deflating. You're wasting your time. Everybody needs to do this, and it needs to be a two-way flow of information up and down the organization, because if you do it right, managers are going to learn a lot, and they may refine goals for future use. Do we have PM software that automates the delivery of the program? Yeah, I'm sure you're not going to kick out a blank paper or a Word document to everybody and say, write it down and take it to your manager and sign it. You know, there are full-blown performance management solutions that automate this whole process, cascade information, allow you to track goal alignment, check on completion ratios, document, chronicle activities and sign-ins. SAP is a great example of that. Then you have to start capturing data. Hey, what percentage of the goal creations were completed? What skills and competencies are being evaluated? What's the percentage of manager employees reviewed that have been actually completed? Like, how many manager employee meetings have been held as a result of this? What's the progress of the goal? So that at any given moment, an executive who cascaded a goal can look in and see where all of the people who have that same goal have done stuff or not done stuff, all right? What are the activities, meetings, and achievements that we've marked against this goal? And then what's the final review and calibration process like? I mean, everybody comes to Dan to get their performance assessments because I give everybody a 5 out of 5. Stephanie's tough. She's got a 2s and 3s on her team, but her team is actually way better than my team. So HR has to mediate and get involved into a calibration process, because not all managers do this the same way. So it's another check to actually ensure that we're all working in the direct way. And was coaching and feedback provided? And if so, what was it? How did it go over, right? So that's the process side of it, because the stakeholders are three. The employees, they need to get the feedback, they need to succeed. The managers need to provide regular guidance, and then HR needs to know that all this stuff is happening, okay? So it's not just, hey, do this and then things will get better. It's a series of steps for each that requires us to be successful. Then, last step.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
Dan, just before you go on, there's just a question that I'm
Mhm.
hoping you might be able to answer. So the question is, I'm interested in the transition time for a company that has to move from a traditional PM format to a coaching/development model. Should managers be trained in coaching and development first and then implement a new PM model, or what works best?
Yeah, there can be different push-pull models here. Often what I've seen are pilot groups run where they think that they identify the right competencies and skills and then how to coach and work through that. And then you test it with a smaller group because often it's not the right effect, and you'll get feedback immediately from the employees that allows you to refine it and roll it out to a larger audience. So that's kind of like a push, a gentle start with a small group and see how it works, then refine it and roll it out. Other cases are you may engage third-party experts to do an assessment of some type to understand what skills and competencies you need to move the needle on. And then you need to look at the learning element again. So are we actually equipping our people to change or develop in those areas? Because if we're going to measure those areas, we need to put something out there for them to say, well, you can't expect me to go to 110% of competency X if you've never told me what I need to do differently about competency X. Okay. I think that kind of answers the question without taking us too far off track. So let's jump in further. And if we have time, we might come back and finish that conversation because I've got a few more thoughts on it. The last phase is really around measuring of performance. So come back to your purpose. Remember those 10 or ones that you've brought together and made up yourself. You need to use your own SMART purpose plans. Did we put these things in place, and do we have measurable outcomes that we were expecting to see connected to our overall goals? Were there common standards across the organization? Pro tips here, did you communicate the range of merit that connects? Because if employees don't see what's in it for them, they're less likely to get involved. That's a great piece of advice. Did you equip managers with coaching on how to do coaching and feedback? So piggybacking off of the question we just discussed, what is the mechanism? I know the SAP system comes with a coaching library and competencies built into it. So you may want to think about the competencies if you're using a Lominger index or something and build out the right type of coaching and feedback processes connected to the observable behaviors. You don't want to address the rogue questions, you want to address the main questions, okay? Last, are you taking an evaluation of the process from all stakeholders? Next year, we're going to do performance management again. What did the employees think was good? What did the managers think was good? What did the executives get out of this? And how do we make refinements to our process to redefine, moving forward again with the same or with different goals, okay? So those are all great pieces of advice that we need to leverage. And then when you've done it all, you've got it. What are you doing and why are we doing performance and what do we expect to change? What have we defined in the performance plan? Do we have the right skills and competencies in place to make this happen? Then on the performance process, do we have a buy-in at all levels? And are we communicating the repercussions of doing this? And then finally, did we deliver? And on what are the other side effects of the impact? To that performance goal list of top 10, you may choose to move the needle on engagement and find out that retention has benefited as well. I mean, these things are not isolating or operating in a vacuum. They all work together closely. Excuse me. All right. The PM ripple. These are the last few slides, I promise you. I feel like I've been talking an awful lot here today. Compensation. Were bonuses and merits paid, and were bonus and merit pay connected to the actual performance, right? So did you set out a scale? Hey, if you got 80%, you get a 1% discretionary increase. If you get 90, it slides to 2. If you get 100, it goes up and up and up. Because if people see this, even as minuscule as it may be, they need to have transparency into that to understand their contributions and how they affect their well-being, right? Workforce planning. Do future business plans account for the current versus desired state of skills and competencies? Hey, next year we're going to launch a whole new product line of self-managed services. Do we have what it takes in our organization? Hey, what kind of skills and competencies are we going to need from our employees to support that line of business? Wow, we got a learning initiative, and now we got to put performance in place to track the effect of that learning, right? So you need to think about whatever business plans you're taking in the future to make sure that you've got the right desired S&C connected to it. Recruiting. Does the current job profiles that we're using, do they align to what is needed for the future? So often I see stale, outdated language on job descriptions that does not accurately reflect what you really need this person to do. So as your company moves the needle forward, you need to spend a few minutes and go back and look at your job descriptions and say, hey, it's like this now. We do this differently, we do it better, and we need to reflect where we need to go in the future and update our job descriptions. And finally, on this point, is the performance outcome accurately reflected in your EVP? So are you saying, hey, we're a company that's moving forward at great success, because that excites people. They want to hear about these things. So if you've had good outcomes from your performance management objectives or operations, you need to put that in as part of your EVP, not just externally to new hires, but internally to the entire organization. Now, I have a feeling I missed the slide in here, didn't I, Stephanie?
I don't think so.
No, oh, here it is. Yeah, onboarding. There we go. Does a new hire get a 30, 60, and a 90-day performance plan? Nothing worse than getting into an organization and not having a clue what's expected of you in the first months, or 3 months, right? You need to have a clearly articulated, we need you to be here by those dates so that you can understand where you're going with your journey inside an organization. That, by the way, is the single-handed biggest impact on new hire turnover, not having a performance plan in place. From a learning perspective, we talked about this at multiple points already, but is the learning content properly aligned to performance indicators? You know, if I'm training you on empathy and then we're moving to an online system where there's no communication, that's a waste of time, right? So you need to make sure that the learning content is aligned to what your performance indicators that you're going to measure are. And is the learning content effective? I mean, there are so many choices out there with great partners, Open Sesame, Vado, Skillsoft, your own custom content providers, Litmos applications. I see unbelievable content being developed and delivered every day. You have choices. Make sure you get content that is effective at being absorbed and delivers a targeted effort to change the needle on the performance indicators you're working on. Succession planning. Are the same skills and competencies being used to create career paths or gap analysis for role readiness? Right? So if I'm an individual, I've been here now for a year, and I said, gee, when I grow up in this organization, I want to be an XYZ leader. And do I get to look at that and say, well, you need these skills and competencies to these levels to be there. And right now my levels aren't there. And in fact, I haven't even started working on some of those competencies. So this is a key role, right? To build out the right succession plan, I need to look up an organization and then start my journey to build out those things and be evaluated on my learning trip. So I can take all the courses I want. Doesn't mean I've got it. It has to show up in my performance evaluation to say, yeah, Dan really is a 4 out of 5 for communications, which is what's needed for his next role. And then likewise, can the leadership look down the organization? Can they look down and say, well, gosh, Jim is coming up to retirement soon. I heard him talking about buying some place in Florida. He's going to leave, and we need somebody to fill that spot. Who do we have that has the right skills and competencies who could be a potential right match for that position? So it goes up and down the organization from a succession planning perspective. So wrapping up, let's recap. What's at stake? The employee experience. Remember that old and new table? Read that in its detail. This is about the employee. It's not about the business anymore. The businesses are made up of employees. The businesses don't run without the employees. We need to give the employees what they need and what they want to be able to make them successful. And that just doesn't mean more money. It's about managing, coaching, feedback, and giving them the right way to do meaningful work. That only happens if there's meaningful dialogue between a manager and employee on a documented, observable point of behavior, which is a performance piece. So there need to be guided structure to define the standards on the performance and evaluate them. And they need to be established organizational wide. There needs to be goal alignment inside of your company. You can't have 550 people at one company all working in different directions on different goals. There needs to be goal alignment, okay? And there needs to be a common consensus on the skills and competencies needed to get those goals done. So when we think about this, employee experience is the quality of the experiences we provide for our people, who are really our customers, right? That will determine the success or failure of our organization. Historically, we focused on culture, and it's still worth focusing on culture, but we can even go a level deeper now and start to understand technical and physical environments in which our people work, giving them the latest and greatest good tools to help them do their work effectively and to actually get them excited about going there to do work. Don't give them an encounter, which is an awful, oh man, I got to go there and work in that interface and that software. I hate that. Give them an experience. Wow, this is great. I can't believe how cool this system is. It is so nice, right? And this is a big change. The technological environment are the tools that they need to do their job, including the user interface, mobile devices, and desktop computers. So you need to be doing this with top-notch, world-class software. Don't scrimp on this and make it up on your own, because it just won't work. And the last one, this is really about the physical environment, includes anything that can be seen, heard, touched, and tasted: desks, chairs, art, and meals. Well, this one is super hard to manage from the pandemic because, you know, the vast majority of people are probably working from home. So their desk, their work, their scenarios that they're all around them are, their own furnishings in most cases. But the reality is, you're asking them to do is every day log into an interface and do something through a piece of software. That's where the rubber's hitting the road right now during the pandemic. It's more important than ever. I mean, you think about the meteoric rise of channels like Zoom or Teams or WebEx. I mean, some of them had left in the dust, and it wasn't because they didn't do it. It's just because that others had a better interface to get it done, and they offered more features and functionality, which is the human experience component of this, right? So that's what I've got for you today. Stephanie, we're doing okay for time?
Yeah, I think so. We're just wrapping up here. So again, thanks for that, Dan. As I think everyone can see the connection between all of these different elements of the employee life cycle and their interdependencies between them all. So again, just to refresh everyone, we've covered hiring and onboarding. I think you can advance here, Dan.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Ah, yes.
And then also learning. Now today we did performance. So our next webinar, and we're targeting, I think, July for this, will be focused on succession planning. There are recorded versions of these webinars. If you are interested in catching up with any of them, they're available on our website, or you can reach out to us directly to get a link to those. And so again, if you have any questions, please do add them into the chat now. Obviously, we're here to help you with how you can improve your employee experience. So in terms of next steps, we will be sharing a copy of this deck and the recording. I think you can advance here, Dan. And then, again, we'd love to talk to you about how we might be able to help you improve your employee experience. We are having a virtual event next month, and that is going to be focused around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you can sign up for that on our website. We've got some exciting partners that are going to be speaking with us on that. And so it's going to be a very high energy event, I think. So again, let me just check. Doesn't look like there's any questions, but if you do have anything going forward, feel free to reach out to me or to Dan directly. Our contact information is here. And thank you for spending the better part of the last hour with us. We certainly appreciate your time, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Any last words, Dan?
I guess the biggest takeaway is don't be that guy, the manager drive by, walking through, hey, has everything good? Good, all right. Don't accept that. That is not acceptable behavior. In fact, it's detrimental behavior. It leads to unprecedented surprises in bad performance and opens the door for all kinds of errors and miscommunications along the way. Be proactive. Starting and being proactive is better than not starting. Okay, not starting is going to cost you. Starting, maybe some hiccups, steps, and trials and tribulations you go through. But if it's done in earnest with the best intents of the employees and the business at heart, you will both benefit. I guarantee it.
Okay. All right. Thank you again, Dan. And we will talk with you all soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.